All right, the next genus we're going to talk about is low yield. There's one cautionary thing I'm going to tell you, though, about Ehrlichia. Ehrlichiosis is low yield, but it is found in the same areas as Lyme disease and transmitted by the same tick as Lyme disease, which means Ehrlichia can cause co-infections very frequently with Borrelia burgdorferi. All right? So, these are gram-negative organisms, obligate, intracellular, and the species that we're going to mention, at least briefly, are Ehrlichia chaffiensis and phagocytophilia. Two different presentations of the disease. We have what's called the granulocytic disease and then the monocytic disease, both transmitted by the tick. Again, if you look at phagocytophilia, transmitted by the Ixodes tick. Okay? So we're going to infect neutrophils here. We are going to get a disease similar to Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So your patient's not going to be feeling well. They're going to have fever. They're going to probably have stiff neck a little bit, vomiting, confusion. But in this case, they're not going to get the rash. One of the clues that is sometimes given if they're trying to get you to think about the possibility of a co-infection is if you have a co-infection with Borrelia burgdorferi and Ehrlichia, typically the fever is much, much higher in that patient with a co-infection between Borrelia and Ehrlichia than with Lyme disease alone. So that might be a really good indication that they're trying to get you to think about a co-infection. How are we going to diagnose this? You see this last bullet point in both is morula. Down here, morula. It's basically, a morula is you can look and find the organisms inside of an infected cell. And the term for that is morula. And sometimes they'll say mulberry-like structure. Okay? And that's diagnostic for Ehrlichia. Drug of choice is doxycycline, okay, which is good because we also use doxy for treatment of Lyme disease. So it's not going to be like you were treating for Lyme disease and, you're not covering Ehrlichia. Generally, the treatment covers both. Just keep in mind, same tick, same area of the U.S., okay, but higher fever likely if there's a co-infection. Now, the disease we've mentioned, again, it's very similar to Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and the diagnosis is going to go back to what those structures look like inside of infected cells. And again, I told you the diagnostic term was morula. The description of that is a mulberry-like structure. So it looks like a little berry sitting there inside of the cell. So you can do that by looking at Guimes-sustained blood and serology and DNA probes. But clearly, if they're trying to get you to think of Ehrlichia, which again is fairly low yield, they're probably going to tell you about a blood film. Okay? Again, how are we going to treat it? Doxycycline, and there really is no good mechanism of prevention except for, again, avoiding the ticks in the first place.